I'm Gabriel Mashia, reporting for the Peace and Social Justice Show here on KZFR, your people-powered radio station. And it's my real pleasure to have Greg Shafer in the studio for a pre-record. And Greg is a local activist with the North State chapter of the Poor People's Campaign. And we're going to talk a little bit about a portion of that, the homeless union that he'd like to get started here in Chico. So welcome to KZFR, Greg Shafer.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Doing wonderful. Maybe a little bit of background. Who is Greg Shafer?
Well, okay. Well, I grew up in Paradise. I work as a mental health provider now here in the county. I work with youth. I've been here most of my life. Yeah, I also work with the California Poor People's Campaign and with the Homeless Union.
So why don't we dive right in on the Homeless Union? What is it? What is the Homeless Union?
Well, the Homeless Union for California has a couple chapters. We have one in Marysville and one in Salinas right now, and we're hoping to start one in Chico. The Homeless Union is a group of houseless, formerly houseless, and currently homeless folks who are organizing themselves. It's a group of folks who advocate for their civil rights, are trying to defend themselves from predatory practices against them by folks in the community, and it's a way for homeless folks to unite around their common goals.
Maybe a little insight on what's going on in Marysville with their chapter.
Right. Well, the Marysville chapter was started out of a group of homeless folks who were living in the river bottoms outside the city. And a community had sprung up there. It's a peaceable community where folks have been looking out for each other for a long time. And they were frequently running into incidents where their belongings were being taken and destroyed without their consent, and their civil rights were being impacted upon. So some of the members of that community organized to bring a case against the city, and they filed legal complaints that were completely well-formed and within their rights to do so. And since then, they've been advocating as a group for their rights as the homeless to protect their possessions, to their right to sleep, their right to be in public spaces, that sort of thing.
Commonly referred to as the right to exist. Huh?
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
How do people get engaged with this? I mean, you talked about a Chico chapter starting one here.
Right, well, the Chico chapter is just about to be inaugurated on January 21st. That's the MLK weekend. That Monday, we're going to have an event in Marysville at the St. John's Episcopal Church. We're going to have a dinner that evening.
I love that place.
Yeah, they're great. They've been super helpful. They've been wicked supportive. Like we all love them very much. Also, the Reverend Liz Theo Harris, who is the national co-chair for the Poor People's Campaign, will be coming out to Butte County that weekend and will be present at that event. If you want to get involved with the Chico Homeless Union or with the Marysville Homeless Union, that first event at the St. John's will be the place to be. And from then, we're going to be organizing within Chico, so you'll hear our names coming up sooner or later. And basically, we believe that poverty is not merely a political issue, but it's a moral issue, and that in the United States, we have failed to meet the moral and ethical needs of caring for one another, especially the poor.
I'm going to play for you right now. I'm going to pause this. A wonderful interview I did with Chris Moore Bachman when he was the executive director of the Peace and Justice Center. And it's all about what the Poor People's Campaign is. And then we'll come back and you can give us some comments on that.
That'd be great.
You're on People Power Radio.
So this is a key aspect of the Poor People's Campaign, is this transition from civil rights movement to human rights movement. And it involves black folks organizing right alongside poor whites, poor Latinos, poor Native Americans, poor Asians, you name it, in our society. Anyone who is struggling economically was invited to the table of the Poor People's Campaign. And this was Dr. King moving from the work of civil rights and reform toward nonviolent revolution. He invited poor people to descend on Washington, D.C. To basically shut it down, if necessary, to get the political establishment to take the needs of the poor seriously. So he said, we're going to camp out in D.C., and we're going to meet with the elected officials, and we're going to wait. We're going to wait in the Capitol until our needs are met. He was asking for a $30 billion package that would include housing, employment, a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. So this is the radical king that we see in the last years of his life, which unfortunately the history books and our culture downplays, if it plays it at all. And I feel like the Poor People's Campaign, Dr. King, is the one we most need to listen to.
Pleasure. Chris Moore Bachman, man, huge shout out. One of my favorite people in Chico, a true peaceful activist. Maybe some comments around what you just saw and heard, and maybe expand on some things.
I guess one of the things that I love most about the Poor People's Campaign now is I feel this connection to this heritage of civil rights activism in the United States. What I love about what Chris said is that Dr. King recognized that much of what was affecting people in the United States negatively, much of the exploitation that went on here, went beyond race. And the Poor People's Campaign was a way of saying we're not divided by race, that we are united by the exploitation of the poor, and that whites, blacks, Native Americans, Hispanics, all sorts of folks who are living in the United States are now suffering under this burden of poverty. And tragically, that's true now more so than it was today. There are more people who live beneath the poverty line now than in 1968 when Dr. King was killed. And 1 in 5 children in the United States lives beneath the poverty line and doesn't have enough access to basic needs like food and shelter. And this is the wealthiest nation on earth. That is a moral crime. I'm not personally going to tolerate, So when the Poor People's Campaign came to California, I was ready. And I'm super excited and honored and grateful to participate in the MLK Unity Group and his commemoration, and in the work of the Marysville Homeless Union, the California Homeless Union, and the Poor People's Campaign moving forward.
All right. If you got one word to describe the Poor People's Campaign, what would it be, Greg Shafer?
Justice.
Yeah. That's one of the words. I'll have to look this up, but that's one of the dictionaries, major dictionaries. That was the word of the year, justice.
Oh, really? Well, great.
Your quote, that's a good word to quote. Greg Shafer. Thanks for being on KZFR.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.